오늘 또 날씨 좋기가 오는데 많이 왔습니다. 네, 저희 오늘 박사님이 조금 더 얘기를 해주실 텐데 이제 헤더라 해시그래프의 가버닝 카운슬이 화제를 받았던 건 언제인 줄 아세요? 사실 그 페이스북의 블록체인 프로젝트인 리브라가 이제 굉장히 시큐리티 같은 보안 회사 쪽을 계속 창업하시고 보안 쪽에 굉장히 이제 신경을 쓰시는 분입니다. 그 이외에도 미 공공 아카데미에서 교수로 역임을 하셨고 스웨덴을 창립을 하시고 스웨덴 창립 설립을 하셨고 해시그래프 기술 기반의 암호화폐 플랫폼인 헤더라 해시그래프를 2018년 1월에 개발을 하시고
tokens. Does that mean you owe twice as much taxes? In the United States, our Congress asked our tax people that question and the IRS said, I don't know. And then Congress wrote them an official letter saying the government doesn't know what to do with taxes in this case or in splits. So forking is not a good thing. It is a source of confusion, but even the word fork is confusing because it means many different things. It seems like everything in this community. Well, in a ledger, every time you update the software, that's a fork. And it's a hard fork or a soft fork, depending on whether it's backward and forward compatible. It's always backward compatible, but whether it's forward compatible, it's a harder or a soft fork. Nothing bad with that. You update your software, that's fine. That kind of forking is nothing. That happens all the time. Then there's another thing where you have the code base. It's used to start a whole new ledger. It has its own new Genesis block. Maybe even has different rules. Maybe even has some different keys. You know, the original code base of Bitcoin has been forked 1,000,000 times into $1 million coin. So you have a ledger that's been coming along over time, and then at a moment, they get mad at each other, and half of the miners go off and start a ledger, and the other half of the miners go off and have a ledger, and you have the same state on both. So if you owned a coin on the original one, now you own a coin on each of them. And if you had some information stored in the original one, why would we not want to have that? What's wrong with that? It's innovation. If you have a coin, now you have 2 coins. Isn't that twice as good? And then the ledger splits. Now there are 2 ledgers that remember who owns your property, that know that you own your property. Then you sell your property to someone and you record it in one of the ledgers. Now one of them says that the person you sold it to owns the property. But the other ledger still says that you own the property. They contradict. How do people know which one is the right one? Or what if someone bad decides to do this on purpose? It's like double spending with property. You sell your house, and you record it on one ledger. When you sell it to one person, then you go sell it. And the whole point of putting it in the ledger was to stop that, to have a single source of truth. If you don't have a single source of truth, it splits. So this can be very disruptive. If you have a cryptocurrency, maybe it splits and now you have a coin on both ledgers. But the whole question of taxation becomes confusing. Will you now be taxed for having twice as many coins? Will you get in trouble for not telling the tax people that says that? Lots of questions about that. And what if you had an obligation, a legal obligation, you don't know which one to be reading? If you have software on your phone that goes to the ledger to check on this information, it might go to the we grow up as an industry and have big companies, big projects, important things running on our ledgers, we need to be able to, at least for some ledgers, give stability where it won't split. So how can we do that? Well, there's several ways we can do it. We can do state proofs of the ledger ID. This is a technical way of ensuring that when your phone goes to some node on the network, it knows that it's on the real network, the one you've always been talking to. And if a few of the nodes split off and make a new network, you can know for sure that they're not part of the one you've always talked to. That is what we can do with the ledger ID with a state proof. You can get a mathematical guarantee that you are talking to the same ledger you've always been talking to. And if somebody splits off, you can guarantee your phone will know it's not the legally, and you can have good governance. If you can create a council of really big people running your network, then it just becomes hard for somebody to split it off and have an equally big council. There's state proofs to ensure that if somebody splits off, it won't count as the same ledger. And you can do automatic code updates. So 3 out of the 4 here are based on state proofs. So that's how we can stop it from splitting. The question is, what is a state proof? How can you, what does this thing do? How does it stop us from splitting? How does it give you security? How does it give you confidence in your ledger? Well, there's lots of answers. And it can prove to you that that node is part of the one true ledger, the one you've always been talking to, and not something that's split off from it. So the state proof even can prove those two things, not just to you, but to a third party. So you can take this, and we were talking today to someone about this. You buy a non-fungible token, you want to prove that it says it is. If you've deleted something off the ledger, how can it prove that you deleted it? Here's how it works. Imagine that we have a ledger, and the state of the ledger is remembering things. For example, it may have cryptocurrency. So it remembers the balances, or remembers unspent transactions, which is equivalent. It ends up knowing what the balances are. And so we know that this account 05236, has a balance of 2,935. But this account only has 1 token in it, 1 H-bar. This account has 42. So that is the state of the ledger right now. Now, maybe Alice doesn't know how many H-bars are in her account. Alice wants to check the balance of her account. How much cryptocurrency is there? So, there's her account. Account number 1234. 0.0.1234. There are 42. Well, there's the network. That's the main net. Each of those circles is one of the nodes. She can pick any node. Please tell me the balance. Of a node can reply, oh, well, the balance is 42. We know that it's true. Maybe the node lied. She could download all the information. Maybe that would give her a better clue, but maybe she still wouldn't be sure. How does she know for sure that that node told the truth? Well, one thing we could do is the node could tell her it's 40 asked for. Account number 001234 has 42 coins in it, 42 H-bars. That was what she wanted to know. And it could tell her, here's the timestamp. That way it can't tell her something from the past. A million years ago you had 42. No, she knows. Oh, it's 42 right now because I see the timestamp. And what if the node is lying? Oh, what we'll do is we'll get digital signatures from most of the nodes, more than 2/3 of them, maybe all of them. They will all digitally sign, and now Alice knows it's the truth. So maybe it's just one node that handed her this state proof, but when she reads through it, she knows it's true. Not only that, how would she prove it to the bank? She gives the bank this state proof. So if Alice gives the bank the state proof, now the bank knows for sure that Alice is not lying. And that node wasn't lying. They know the whole network agreed that her balance is 42. That is very useful. However, this is not very efficient. In fact, this is impractical. The problem is, are we going to have to go collect a signature from every single node every time you ask for a different question? Every time someone asks a single node, hey, what's my balance? Does that node have to go get signatures from every node in the network? It would collapse. That's horribly inefficient. Or what's the balance of that account? Alice asked, what's the balance of that account? Each of of those answers, we're going to do a hash. We will use a cryptographic hash that takes this answer and scrambles it and creates a string of 48 bytes. No matter how big the answer is, we'll squish it down to 48 bytes. And the nice thing about a cryptographic hash is that if you take this and make the hash, it's very hard to find something else that would have the same. There's the hash of her answer. And then we're going to take two of those and put them next to each other. You take these 48 bytes followed by these 48 bytes. So we have 96 bytes. And you take the hash of those 96 bytes. And that gives you this hash. So this sort of indirectly has a little bit of influence from Alice's balance. Hash of those two, and the hash of those two, and the hash of that. And at the very top, we have a hash now that has been affected by everything down here, the entire state. That is the hash of the whole state, all the balances. With 8 of them, we had to go 3 layers deep. It's only 30 layers deep, 10 more layers. Not a lot. If you went to a trillion, it would only be 40 layers deep. Not a lot. So the entire state ends up making this tree of hashes. Someone named Merkle came up with this idea, so it's a Merkle tree. This was the question that Alice asked. We take its parent, the hash above it, and then its parent, the hash above it, and the hash above that, and the hash above that. The gray circles now are a path, starting with Alice's question, going all the way up to the top, all the way to the root. Those are the gray hashes. Each of those gray hashes has 2 children. One of them is gray. Let's color the other one blue. So this one's other child is blue, this one's other child is blue, this one's other child is blue. So the gray is a single path to the top. The blues are the siblings of those gray ones. And the interesting thing here is, that we don't have to have all of the nodes signing Alice's answer. What we could do instead is I could hand you her answer and all of the blue and gray hashes, and then get digital signatures only on the top one. Was generated from these two, and no one on earth knows how to find anything else that could have been underneath it that would have generated that hash. So if I give you all the blue and gray ones, and I give you signatures on this, so you can trust it, then you can also trust that this one and this one are correct. Whoever signed this one was also indirectly signing off on this one and this one. You can believe them. Same argument. If they believe this one, then you can believe these two. And if you believe this one, then now you can believe these two. If you believe this one, you can believe this. So you will believe Alice's balance, even if the only signatures you have are of a Merkle path. I don't have to give you a trillion different signatures down here. I just give you signatures at the root, at the top. And I don't have to give you all trillion pieces of information down here. I just tell you Alice's balance, and then I would go through, if there were a trillion down here, I would go through 40 pairs of hashes. And that's all I have to give you. If I give you that, you can believe me. So 40 hashes isn't very much. A trillion is a lot. It gets even better though. I don't even have to give you the gray ones. I'll just give you the blue ones. So here's what I will do. I will hand you the blue ones and the signatures at the top. And you can say, oh, here's the data you gave me, and you could calculate the hash. And then you could put your hash next to this blue one that I gave you and calculate this one. and then put that next to the one I gave you and calculate this, and put that next to the one I gave you and calculate this, and then check the signatures and see if they're right. So I don't have to give you 80 hashes, I only give you 40 hashes, and that will prove all true. So the beauty of a Merkle tree is it gives a very efficient way to prove that those signatures at the top apply to everything. So, the state proof now does not have to go get signatures from all the nodes on Alice's data. That would be really inefficient. Instead, we'll put the Merkle path inside the state proof. Just these blue circles, that's it. Hashes where the blue circles are. And now, the signatures are not signatures on the data, they're signatures on the top hash. To check the digital signature, you need to know the public keys. And I said it's a supermajority. I said it was more than 2/3 of the nodes. But really, it's nodes that have more than 2/3 of the stake. This is proof of stake. So to check it, you need their public keys, you also need to know how much stake they had. Now, if the stake proof includes this address book, you can use that to check these signatures and to check that it's more than 2/3 of the stake on the root of this. And then you look at the timestamp, which was also signed, and you look at these blue circles, and that lets you work your way down, and now you know that that is true. If you knew who the nodes were yesterday, and they all signed today's address book, we could do it this way. If you knew who the nodes in the network were yesterday, they could digitally sign today's address book for who the nodes are today. And then they could sign the timestamp in the root of the Merkle tree. And so you would believe this. But what if you didn't know about this yesterday? How would you verify it for your older ones? Just go all the way back to the Genesis address book. Then anyone who knows the Genesis address book of this ledger will be able to verify the state proof. And so anybody who knew the Genesis address book can just be handed the state proof and know that it's true. 2 H bars on the ledger that has this ledger ID. That's what you can know just by reading state proof, even if you don't know anything else. Because you'll use the ledger ID to check this is the correct Genesis address book. Is it the hash of this? And then once you trust this, you'll check its signatures to know if you can trust this one. And once you trust it, you can trust this one. And then you can trust this one. And then you can use this one to check the signatures on the timestamp and the root. And then you can check the calculations of the hashes and know that the data is us, and they cannot lie. All you need is a ledger ID. And so this is interesting. I think eventually all ledgers should do this. And so every ledger in the world will have a ledger ID. It's just 48 bytes, or even fewer. If you want to use 32 bytes, but we try to be more secure, use 48 bytes, called the CNSA standard. So it's 48 bytes, and that's it. The name of the ledger. And no one can lie.
And I think a lot of people here are very interested about the governing council, because we also mentioned about it. Can you please explain why those big companies, such as Tata, Nomura Holdings, Boeing, they are joining as your governing council, and what are the criteria for you to choose to make your platform really stable and secure and fair? So 간단하게 설명을 드리면, 제가 말씀드린 것처럼 굉장히 큰 회사들, 예를 들면 타타 커뮤니케이션, 노무라 홀딩스, 보잉, 이런 곳들이 다 지금 헤데라 해시그래프의 가버닝 카운슬에 좀 조인을 하고 있거든요. 그래서 왜 그렇게 큰 회사들이 헤데라 해시그래프의 가버닝 카운슬을 조인을 하고 있는지, 그리고 헤데라 입장에서는 어떻게 그런 가버닝 카운슬을 선택해서 말씀하신 것처럼 안정적이고 공평하고 효율적인 그런 걸 만드는지를 제가 여쭤봤습니다.
Yes. So, the governing council, these are the governors that run the network. They make choices about the code base. When do we add features? When do we upgrade the code? And there can be fights. Anyone who's in charge, fight with each other, but they finally have a vote, and they finally make a decision, and then all the nodes follow that decision, so that they can actually enforce it using various mechanisms like the state proofs. It is incredibly important to have a governing council that is decentralized in the sense that they are spread out in different countries, under different governments, on different continents, that these are big companies in different industries, and that they're even spread out over time. They can only be on the council for 6 years, and they have to leave. So there'll be constant turnover of who's on the council. We have been very careful to make sure that they are not all the same industry. So we have, you mentioned Nomura, which is a financial institution, and Boeing, which makes airplanes, and Tata Communications, which is a telecommunications company. We have IBM, which is technology. We have Deutsche Telekom, we have Swisscom Blockchain, we have, who have I forgotten? Magazine Luiza, Magalu. We have a huge retailer in Latin America. And where are they? Well, I just said people from Japan to Latin America, to North America, to Europe, to India, all around the world.
발굴하신 거 보니까 영어를 다 잘하시고 이해하신 것 같아요. 근데 이제 한마디로 요약을 하면은 결국은 이제 크고 이제 그렇게 레퓨테이션이 있는 그런 큰 회사들, 그리고 뭐 전 세계에 퍼져 있는, 왜냐하면 하나의 정보에 의해서 영향을 받지 않도록 그리고 다양한 인더스트리에 있는 그런 그 기업들을, 왜냐하면 다양한 그 퍼스펙티브를 위해서 그런 것들이 이제 제너럴 카운슬로 들어오고 있고, 그러면은 왜 그 사람들은 들어오느냐? 경제적인 이득은 하나도 없다라고 해요. 그러면은 이제 헤더라 같은 경우는 그런 가버닝 카운슬 조인하는 회사들한테 돈을 받지도 않고 주지도 않는다. 그러면은 왜 이렇게 들어와가지고 가버닝 카운슬이 되냐? 그리고 그 이유는 그런 회사들이 직접 헤더라 해시브랜드의 유저, 그 위에 그 앱들을, 그 서비스들을 빌드를 하고 있기 때문이다라고 말씀을 해주셨습니다. So my next question is, what are the real example that you mentioned, the use cases that those big companies are building on top of it?
Yes. And so small developers as well.
Yeah.
And even there are incubators now like Helix that help the small developers. So the question is, what are they building on top of it? We have, just from our council members, we have interest in things like tokenizing assets. So you can have stocks or real estate being tokenized and being bought and sold on it. They're dealing with where big companies have to share information with each other. So you have different things like, things like audit trails and storing audit trails in the ledger so that you can prove to an auditor that you did the right thing. We have them looking at making it easy for consumers to do various payments. There's lots of things that the big council members are interested in using the ledger for. On the other hand, we have small people, small companies, and individual people who are starting up dApps, writing dApps for it. We have hundreds of people, over 1,000 dApps have come and talked to us and said they're building on top of us. We've listed lots of them on our website, and we have actually onboarded them now. A couple dozen of them are now on our mainnet, just waiting for us to open it up to the world, which happens on the 16th. On the 16th of September, we will open it up, open access. Anyone can create an account, anyone can get HBARs and use them, anyone can run smart contracts, and even at that moment, when we flip the switch to open it up, there will be a number of smart contract dApps already installed that you can run from the very first.
9월 17일 오픈 액세스가 되면은 퍼블릭 블록체인으로 누구나 이제 트랜잭션을 할 수 있고 스마트 컨트랙트를 사용할 수 있고 HBAR을